I am married to, my wife's name is Andrea. We met at Baylor. We've been married for a little over 8 years now. We have 3 kids. Madison is 5, Faith is 4, and Cole will be 2 in about 3 weeks.
That's awesome. So I'm sure here in the off-season, that's where you get to spend the majority of your time. Is that right?
That is, it's pretty much all of my time. I tell you what, I really respect my wife a lot more. I love playing baseball. A great part about it is that I get to be home for 4 or 5 months during the off season. A challenging part is that I get to be home for 4 or 5 months during the off season, and I get to live what my wife lives, or the average housewife lives on a daily basis. I'm up in the morning with the kids. Some days I'm taking them to school. Some days I'm not. Some days I'm picking them up. Some days I'm doing both. I'm trying to help out with homework. I'm trying to do the dishes and clean the house, and just do all of that with in combination with getting some workouts in, with speaking when I get the opportunity to just living a normal life for a few months.
Seeing the grandparents, I know when I called that day, you were you were at the grandparents, and kids were running everywhere.
Definitely, yeah. Fortunately, my wife's parents live in Flower Mound, and awesome. My parents live in Houston, so they're actually going to be coming up tomorrow, and it's great to be close to family.
So tell us about that. Tell us about your upbringing. We'd love to hear, kind of from beginning to where you are now.
I was a kid that I love the game of baseball from the time I was 2 or 3 years old. My dad tells a story that he got me a Nerf ball and bat for, I think it was my 3rd birthday, and I just took it and I ran with it. I played a little soccer and a little basketball along the way, but I knew for certain that this was just the game for me. And every paper I wrote in school, I wrote about baseball. Every picture that I drew of a baseball field. I idolized Ken Griffey Jr. And Barry Bonds and Will Clark, and just a few, to name a few, growing up. And so my life pretty much revolved around baseball. My parents encouraged it, and It's funny looking back on it, because there's not a whole lot else to me. I was a normal kid. I played video games and I had fun. I went to school. I was a good student. But when it got colder and it was time to put the bat and the ball and the glove away, and it was time to get the football out or the basketball out, I was by myself hitting off the tee, because I couldn't put it down. It was a year-round thing. I'd come home from school, I'd be by myself. We had the way that my parents' garage was set up. It was a 3-car garage with brick kind of over each garage, and I would go try to hit the brick, and so I wouldn't hit the garage doors. So I was trying to hit my spots, and I don't know. I love the game from the very beginning, and that love continues today.
So obviously you started very young. When did you, that point where you knew this is what I want to do for the rest, of my early adult life anyway?
I said it's what I want to do since I was 5 years old. Okay. That's when I started playing organized baseball. And, if my teachers in school would ever ask me, what do you want to do when you grow up? I would say, I want to play baseball. And, when I got into high school baseball, I didn't really know how much of a reality it was. You do so much physical growth in high school, and you just don't know what opportunities are out there, and how it kind of comes about to where you get drafted or that sort of thing. Fortunately, when I was a sophomore, I didn't start the season on varsity, but I got called up to the varsity team. And our number 1 pitcher on our varsity team, his name was Chris George. I don't know how many of you know him. He was the 31st pick in the 1998 draft. He got to the big leagues pretty quick, but I got to see scouts at all of these games when I was a sophomore in high school, and he was a left-handed pitcher. At the time, people thought that my future was as a left-handed pitcher. That's how I made the varsity team. Mm-hmm. So, I got to see kind of firsthand that, I wasn't as good as Chris, but just seeing all the scouts and seeing Chris get drafted kind of helped me to realize that it was within my grasp. and that I could get drafted. I got drafted in the 50th round after my senior year. I had already committed to Baylor, so it was a no-brainer for me. I knew I wanted to go get an education. I needed to still grow as a player, and fortunately, I kind of took some small steps each year, and then fortunately, by the time I was 21 in my junior year, things had started to click a little bit. I had a good summer in the Cape Cod League using a wooden bat, and got drafted high by the Red Sox, and that's kind of beginning to end in terms of the dream being realized, I guess. Sure. Besides the minor league story and actually getting to the big leagues.
So there's, dads in here, kids in here, obviously, that have aspirations, parents that struggle, how do I push my kid? How do I lead them? Any advice just kind of along the way? Obviously, we know school's important, grades are important.
Definitely.
Those kind of things. But
this is a hard question for me to answer because I want to be very honest, but at the same time, I understand what a dream it is, and I don't want to. Sure. There's so much hope out there. I don't want to dash anybody's hopes, but think of all the people there are in the world, and at any given time, there's 750 Major League Baseball players. On 40-man rosters, there's 1,200, but and then there's plenty more playing minor league baseball. So I am so extremely blessed, and I think when I look at myself as a baseball player, and when I think of the answer to this question, my talent and pretty much every guy out there that's playing Major League Baseball right now, I'm going to say 99%, it's a God thing. God did not make me Josh Hamilton or Albert Pujols or Barry Bonds, but he gave me some special gifts. He gave me some gifts to play this game. He blessed me with some eye-hand coordination. He blessed me with a lot of special things that when I'm out there playing, I don't play it in the prettiest manner. I think my swing's decent. I think my setup looks kind of funny. I think I run funny. I think I do a lot of things funny up there. But there's plenty of guys that have the perfect swing, that are 6'3", 215 with 6% body fat, that are sitting behind a desk right now because that's what God has for them. And this is what God has for me, fortunately, because I've dreamt it my entire life, and I'm able to use this stage to share Jesus with people. But I think my advice would be just to ease your kids into it, and to make sure to emphasize the fun, and realize that if your kid misses, if your son misses games, when he's 10, 11, 12 years old, it's not gonna make the rest of his career. If he gets hurt, it's not gonna mean the end of his career. When I see it from my nephew. My nephew he's almost 13 years old, and he's playing a lot of baseball. He travels a lot. I did not play on my first travel team until I was 11 years old, which was a tournament up here in Fort Worth. I probably played 20 to 30 games a year until I was 14. When I was 14, I think I played about 60 or 70, and then that was right before high school. So in high school, that got cut back down to however many high school games you play in a season, 20, 25, and then summer ball on top of that, so maybe 50 or 60 altogether. But there's kids playing 100 games a year, and I got to a point when I was a sophomore in high school where fortunately I was talented enough, and my dad was a people pleaser, so he could never say no to people. He wanted to develop the connections, and so there were times when I was 16 years old that I was playing 3 different games on 3 different teams in 3 different parts of the city of Houston on a Saturday. And it became exhausting, because at that point in your career or in your life, you want a social life as well. And like I said, I love the game enough to where it didn't end up mattering. But I would just say, ease your kids in slowly, realize that it is a God thing, and just emphasize the fun and enjoy it with them, have fun with them.
That's great. That's great. So you've told us a little bit, beginning to end, kind of break it down for us a little bit. I mean, your high school career, what that was like for you. What was that like?
My high school career was, there was a lot of growth involved, but at the same time, I still wasn't at the point where I was extremely challenged. I still felt like I was fortunate enough to be playing as one of the most talented players. I worked hard, but I didn't really realize all the work that went into it. Like I said, most people thought that my future was as a pitcher, so made varsity my sophomore year as a pitcher. Didn't really end up playing that much the rest of that year. I played throughout the district season. I made varsity because somebody failed. He came back up for the playoffs, so I didn't play that much. My junior year, they gave me the opportunity to hit as well. I had some success, but fortunately, I broke my arm throwing a pitch. At the time, it was devastating, but in the end, it ended up being a huge blessing in disguise because that pretty much ended my pitching career and gave me the opportunity to focus on, at the time, my time as a first baseman, and gave me the opportunity to get drafted and get a college scholarship. Obviously, I didn't sign. I got drafted by the Angels, and I didn't sign with them at the time, and just gave me the opportunity to go to Baylor and focus on playing right field every day, which is what I did there.
That's awesome. So, getting drafted, that had to be an incredible moment for you.
That was kind of just the culmination of a dream, and it was the culmination of where I was up to that point in my life, the first 21 years of my life, and from age 5 through age 21 of playing the game of baseball, and just a huge blessing. We were playing in a super regional when I was at Baylor, and my family all drove up for the day. At the time, the Major League Baseball draft was not on TV. So my family drove up. There was, I guess my agent was not with us. He had a phone to his computer speaker, and we were in a restaurant, and we all went crazy. Everybody was looking at us like we were insane. But just a very happy moment, not only for me, but for my parents who, spent so much time driving me throughout the city of Houston to play, for my dad who sacrificed so much time coaching, and then for my brothers and sisters who I guess sacrificed time with my parents because they spent so much time with me, and just their involvement and the time that they had spent with me just playing the game and encouraging me growing up. My brother is 13 years older than me. My sisters are 9 and 7, so 9 and 7 years older than me, respectively. So it's almost like I had 5 parents growing up because I had so much, these older sisters that raised me as well as my parents, and just a lot of wisdom coming from all of them.
That's awesome. You think of a lot of firsts, obviously getting drafted, being called up to the big leagues. I'd love to hear, what it was like to be in the minors, get called up to the big leagues.
My minor league career was actually, it was very challenging and very disappointing early on. I was a first-round draft pick and in the Boston Red Sox organization. So Boston is obviously a place where fans love baseball. And so there was a lot of media attention. There was kind of a lot of expectations as a first-round draft pick. And I don't know that I put pressure on myself, but when I didn't live up to expectations, I definitely beat myself up a little bit. People expected me to come in and be this guy that was going to get to the big leagues in 2 years and just play a major role on the big league team. My first 3 weeks in minor league baseball, fine, I hit 350. Didn't hit for much power, but I did well enough to where I got promoted to, I skipped a level. There's short season, which is where I was, and then there's low A, and then there's high A. I skipped low A. I went to high A in Sarasota, Florida, and that was kind of where I needed a reality check. I hit 240 with 1 home run and about 250 at-bats. Come back to spring training the following year in 2004. I struggled in spring training. They had given me the opportunity to make the AA team. I did not make the AA team. went back to high A ball in Sarasota. I struggled for about a month and a half with very mediocre numbers. I got hurt and missed about 2.5 months. And once the season was said and done, I had about 300 at-bats. I hit 4 homers, and I hit 260. So not exactly the production that you're looking for from a first-round draft pick. 2005 was a little bit different. I started to turn things around really pretty quickly. They sent me to Japan to work out for 2 weeks with Sada Haruo. I don't know how many of you know who Sada Haruo is, but he's basically the Hank Aaron, or I guess the Barry Bonds of American baseball. He has, I think his home run total is somewhere in the 800s. So they wanted me to figure out how to use my lower half a little bit more mechanically. So I started to do that. When that year was said and done, I hit about 275 with 14 home runs and RBIs in the mid-70s, and kind of revived my career a little bit at the time. Next year, had a chance to make the big league team. I got put on the 40-man roster in the offseason. So I had a decent year in the minor leagues, good enough to make it to the big leagues. And I mean, what a dream come true. I remember the phone call that I got. It was August 31st of 2006. And I got taken out of the game that night, which never happened. So I was expecting that they had got a call from the big league team saying that I was going to get called up. So I hang around the clubhouse for a little bit, and nobody says anything to me. My manager never says anything. So I just get in my car with my wife, and I drive home. About 10 minutes down the road, I get a call. You're going to the big leagues. So just lots of excitement. Turn around, get my stuff. Next day, show up to Fenway Park. Didn't play that night, but just stepping in the clubhouse with Curt Schilling, with Manny Ramirez, with David Ortiz, with just this incredible collection of players. I was blown away and starstruck a little bit. Next day, I had a chance to start my first game. Didn't sleep the night before. Didn't eat very much for breakfast that morning. It was a day game, and first at bat, hit a line drive single up the middle off A.J. Burnett for my first big league hit and my first big league at bat.
So that was your first hit, your first home run?
First home run was a few weeks later. I really didn't play a whole lot my first month in the big leagues, but fortunately it worked out to where we were going to Yankee Stadium a few weeks later. We had a Friday night game, a scheduled doubleheader on Saturday, and then a single game on Sunday. Well, we got rained out on Friday night, and so we ended up having day-night doubleheaders on Saturday and Sunday. Well, the good thing about being on a team like the Red Sox, who is a veteran club of older guys, in September when we were out of the race, those older guys do not want to play 2 games in one day. So, as a young guy, I was fortunate enough to where I got a lot of play. I started 3 out of those 4 games. They didn't start me in one of them because Randy Johnson was thrown for the Yankees, and obviously left on left. They don't start too many lefties, especially rookies against Randy Johnson. So the day game on Sunday, I go look at the lineup, kind of surprised. I'm leading off, and we're facing Jarrett Wright, who pitched in the big leagues for a while. He started Game 7 of the World Series, I believe, in 1997 for the Indians. And so sure enough, worked the count to 2-2. And he throws me a fastball down and in. I hit it in the short porch right field seats at the old Yankee Stadium. And I don't think it was really could have been said any better. Hitting a home run at old Yankee Stadium as a member of the Boston Red Sox, getting booed a little bit on my way around the bases. And fortunately, I did hit it at Yankee Stadium, so they didn't want that ball, so they threw it back on the field. So fortunately, I got the ball.
That's awesome. So you get traded to Texas. You got to come to the promised land, back home, right? Well, tell us about that, what that was like, and what point that came.
I think starting about 2005, when I really started to get how the business of baseball worked and where I was at, and that I was kind of an underachieving prospect in their eyes, I realized that my future in Boston was just not going to happen. Obviously, I made it to the big leagues a year later, but what I mean is there's guys that are in the minor leagues that go up and down, and they make a career out of that, or, that happens for a few years, and then their career fizzles out. What I was talking about was I wanted to get to the big leagues and stay in the big leagues, and I was 99% sure that was not going to happen in Boston. So my wife and I just had talked so much about getting traded and about how cool it would be to get traded back to Texas. I was from Houston, so I had talked about the Astros, but she had these vivid dreams about me getting traded to the Rangers. And, sometimes I laughed at her, sometimes I wanted to hear more. But, fortunately, it was, I guess, July 31st of 2007, and I'm in Columbus, Ohio. And I'm actually set to become a father in 4 days. My wife was set to be induced on August 4th of 2007 with our first child. So I'm in Columbus, Ohio on a road trip. My wife is back in Providence, Rhode Island, where we lived. I was playing for Pawtucket, the AAA team for the Red Sox. And so it's probably 2 or 3 o'clock. I'm getting ready to go to the field. I'm with my roommate in the hotel, and we're watching the ESPN trade deadline special, and Peter Gammons gets on there and says my name as a possible prospect going to the Rangers for Eric Gagne in return. And I was kind of laying down about to take a nap, and I just shot right up. As I did not expect to hear my name, for one. Two, the fact that my name was linked to the Rangers was just a blessing. I mean, it just could not have worked out in a more perfect situation. So basically the trade ended up happening, obviously. It's kind of a funny story. That night, Curt Schilling was making a rehab start for us. And when you're in the minor leagues, you don't travel like you're in the big leagues. You get the worst flights. You get the 6 a.m. flights. You're up at 3 or 4 in the morning, and you're traveling. You're having 2 and 3 layovers, and just it's a difficult way to travel. So Curt Schilling was there that night, and I had to get home to my pregnant wife and just figure out what I was going to do from there. So I asked Curt Schilling, who was on John Henry's private plane back to Boston right after the game. I said, can I get a ride back with you? And so I got back on the plane with him. I get back late that night. I wake up the next morning, start packing my stuff. They had actually wanted to immediately from Columbus send me out to, I think the Rangers AAA team was in Fresno at the time. I said, I can't do it. My wife is pregnant. She's set to give birth in a few days. So they said, take a week and do what you need to do. So my daughter was born. Actually, the induction never happened. Or that being induced never happened. Her water broke. My daughter was born on the 3rd. We spent 3 days in the hospital in Boston. On the 6th, I want to say 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th. 5th we went home. The 6th I flew from Boston to Sacramento. The team was in Sacramento then. The first night was the 6th. They sat me the first night since I hadn't played in a week. The 7th I played, the 8th I played. The 8th was a day game, and in the big leagues we would have flown out right after. But like I said, in the minor leagues we weren't flying out to the next day. So I go hang out and just kind of relax a little bit off everything kind of in a whirlwind. I get a call that night from the manager saying, you're not going with us in the morning, you're going to the big leagues. So I fly back to Texas, and we had an off day that day. The 10th made my major league debut Rangers debut as a defensive replacement, and on the 11th, I believe it was the 11th, made my first start as a Ranger. So just a crazy 10 days of my life that I will never forget.
That's awesome. Offense, defense, what do you prefer? What do you enjoy the most?
I love to hit. I could hit all day long. My wife was asking me in December, it was mid-December, and she's like, are you, we had been off for October, November, 2.5 months. And, I'm doing my workouts, 3 or 4 days a week, and, just doing my business, taking care of business like I always do. And she's saying, are you getting the itch yet? The itch to go back. And I'm like, not necessarily. I'm enjoying being home with the family, but I want to go hit. I could hit all day long. I really enjoy it. I take pride in my defense. everybody thought I was a right fielder in college. They moved me to center once I got drafted by the Red Sox because they wanted to take some offensive pressure off me, and they didn't think I was going to be a 30 home run guy. So, if they could play solid defense and hit 15, 20 home runs a year, that cuts it for a center fielder. So I got to the point where I started playing great defense in center field for the Red Sox. I won some minor league defensive player of the year awards, and like I said, I struggled offensively. Well, once I got to the big leagues, that all flip-flopped. My bat started coming around, and I started to figure things out. But for some reason, defensively, I just struggled. And, fortunately, this past year was a year that I finally seemed to put both together. And hopefully I can continue to do that for the rest of my career. But, I love defensively. I mean, if you get a chance to rob a home run, it's fun. But
Awesome.
That doesn't happen very often. Throwing a runner out, I absolutely love doing that from the outfield, and that's a great feeling. But there's just so many things offensively that you just can't beat. Hitting a home run, just making perfect contact. I mean, there's just not that's one feeling. As many times as I've played this game, and as many times as I've swung a bat in my life, that is one feeling when I hit the sweet spot of the ball on the sweet spot of the bat, and basically that ball just feels like it melts into the bat, and I see that ball shoot off. There's just no better feeling, and it just never gets old.
That's
never
cool.
gets old.
We obviously enjoyed you hitting the ball the way you did this last year as well. That was a pretty incredible watch, giving you chances against a lot of lefties as well. So that role has been awesome. Greatest big league moment? First of all,
Okay.
My greatest big league moment was there. I was when the Yankees, when Neftali struck out A-Rod, got to go to the World Series. Been a Ranger fan all my life. I was there with my father-in-law and my son. It was an incredible moment.
Definitely.
I'd love to hear what your greatest
that's
big league moment.
The winning the ALCS in 2010 and 2011. Just it's a long, hard road from the first day of spring training into the last day of the season. And I enjoy every single bit of it, but it's definitely hard work. And to have a group of guys all pulling in the same direction and to be able to celebrate every single team, this time of year, every single team, the media talks to them, they're saying, oh, we want to be that team that wins the World Series this year. Whether it's, I don't know. Obviously, who the team, the Houston Astros. They're a team that's rebuilding right now, and they're struggling, but the media's going to come up to the players' lockers, going to go talk to their coaching staff on the first day of spring training, and they're going to tell the media they want to win a World Series. That's just the way it is. All 30 teams, all the players are going to say they want to win a World Series. So to be American League champions, to be that last team standing in the American League, it's so sweet to be able to celebrate like that with your teammates. And I'll throw in Game 6 of the 2011 World Series as gut-wrenching as it was, and how it probably will always make my stomach hurt when I watch highlights of it or see highlights of it. As a guy that's been around a game of baseball, I recognize it as one of the greatest games in history, one of the greatest games in World Series history, the greatest game that I have ever been a part of, probably will ever be a part of, regardless of the outcome. And I'm honored to have been a part of that game, regardless of the outcome. And then from a personal standpoint, it's pretty easy. 2010, we were playing the Yankees. I think we were down 2-1. I had a 2-run homer in the 5th or 6th inning to put us up 3-2. A-Rod tied it up sometime later in the game, made it 3-3. I don't know if there were any more runs scored, but in the end, I hit a walk-off single off Mariano Rivera with the bases loaded, and Mariano Rivera is as much of a class act as there is. He's going to go down in history as the best closer in the history of the game, one of the best pitchers in the history of the game, maybe greatest pitcher in the history of the postseason. And to be able to do something like that against the Yankees, against a pitcher like that, it's very humbling. It's an honor, and those are the days that, it's incredible just to be a Major League Baseball player.
That's awesome. We're going to switch gears now. We've been talking about baseball and kind of upbringing, but I think the thing that endears us to you obviously, is the way you play the game, right? But also just who you are as a person, the way you handle the media. Obviously, you're a family man. Your faith lived out in front of millions. Tell us how you came to know Christ.
So we've kind of covered a little bit of my background. What I haven't mentioned is growing up, I grew up in the Catholic Church, and I was a good kid. I never got into trouble. I made good grades. Like I said, loved playing the game of baseball. And so I get this scholarship to go to Baylor University. Well, Baylor was not at the top of my list. It impressed me. The campus was nice. The facilities were incredible. The coaching staff was genuine and amazing. But I was a social kid. I liked being in big atmospheres with, Texas A&M always appealed to me. My sister went there, and you do have a decent quarterback. So Texas A&M always appealed to me, and I hated Texas because of it. Well, about early into my senior year, I get my first recruiting letter from the University of Texas. So now I'm on the University of Texas bandwagon. Rice was a great school in the Houston area, and it's just funny how the Lord was watching over me, because Baylor just seemed to be the last place on my list personally. But everybody said, in advice in terms of picking a school, everybody said, follow your heart, follow your heart. So my heart told me that Baylor University was the place that I needed to go, and was gonna give me my best opportunity to play college baseball and hopefully get drafted. About a few weeks into school, I met my wife, and her group of friends ended up being the group of friends that my guys hung out with. And school started probably mid-August, and September 29th, a month into school, that was our first date. My wife looks at me straight in the eye. Probably couldn't have been 5 or 10 minutes into our first date. And she said, "Can I ask you a question?" I said, "Yes." She said, do you think you're a Christian?" And I paused, and I said, "I'm a Christian. I've grown up going to church. I'm a good person. It's pretty plain and simple for me. I'm a Christian." So obviously there was just something different about her from the second that I met her. And so we spent more time together. We continued to date. It was Monday night right before Thanksgiving vacation. And, just the time that I'd spent with her, the Lord just continued to work in my heart. And so we went to a Monday night praise and worship service, and it was called Touchstone. And something about that night, just the people around me, the worship, God just really laid it on me that night, and really helped me to feel the void and the hole that was in my heart. And Andrea looked at me, and she knew something was wrong with me. And so I guess to make a long story short, we went to go get coffee afterwards. Any Baylor people know where Common Grounds and Pizza Hut is, right next to each other. And so we were going to get coffee. We parked in the Pizza Hut parking lot, and I was in tears, and my wife prayed with me that night, and I accepted Christ and came to the Lord.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Obviously, continue to grow in your faith. You have a favorite scripture?
I have a lot of favorite scriptures. I wrote a list. Scripture is one thing when I speak publicly, for some reason I lock up, and I've gotten better lately. But I got some stories with these. Obviously, I told you how I was saved. I thought I was a good person. The Lord worked in my heart. It just dawned on me that just by being a good person, that I was not going to go to heaven just by being a good person. So one that stuck out to me pretty early on in my walk was Galatians 2:21, and that basically says, "For if righteousness could be gained through the law, then Christ's death meant nothing. And I had lived my whole life to that point thinking that I was good enough and a Christian with no regard for Jesus. James 1, 2 through 4. This is, I got a good story for this one. This past season, obviously you Ranger fans know that Josh had his ups and downs this season. Well, he had a tough June and July, I believe it was, and I just was really looking for some way to encourage him. I don't know how many of you remember the way I started the season in 2009, but I started the season 0 for 23, and it was my second year in the big leagues, so I was very insecure at the time. I was thinking, am I going to get sent down? What's going to happen? This is just, it's not good. So I show up to the field one day, and Josh had gone to our team photographer and gotten a picture blown up that found of the two of us. We're high-fiving. He signed the picture, wrote some scripture on there and some encouraging words. And so I was thinking about that, and I was like, man, I really need to do, I really need to do the same thing for him. So I guess the major thing that I needed to do was find the right scripture to encourage him. So talked to my pastor, I talked to just some friends, and I searched the Bible a little bit. So I came across James 1, 2 through 4, and that says, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, for you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." And what I get from that is I've always been the kind of person to think I'm a perfectionist in some ways, and I don't like it when there is just unrest in my life, when things aren't going just completely smooth. So what I get from that is, one, the Lord is going to challenge us regardless. We're going to go through trials. We're going to go through struggles. Two, if we approach those struggles in the right way, we are going to be better men on the other side of it, and we're going to be mature and complete, not lacking anything. Psalm 37:4 is one that I've really been, it's really been hitting my heart lately, and I love this one. So this is a story behind this one is it's about June 1st this year, and my first 2 months this season were pretty mediocre, and I was struggling mentally because the bottom line just wasn't what I expected. The performance was not what I expected, and I knew that I was possible of playing here, and I was playing here. So I called my agent, who is a very wise, very godly man. And, I think the thing I was struggling with at the time was my faith in baseball, linking those together, and just basic prayer when it comes to baseball. Because obviously this is something, baseball is near and dear to my heart, and it's something that I want to pray about. But at the same time, if I look at it from the outside looking in, baseball is a game. And it is very insignificant in terms of everything else that's going on in the world in terms of prayer. And so I was feeling guilty, honestly, just praying about the game of baseball and praying about not necessarily success, but me being able to play up to the capabilities of what the Lord has for me. So Psalm 30, Josh's his mentor, Shane Kelly, actually, we were talking about this one night, and I've actually heard this a few times since from other people, but Psalm 37:4 says, "Delight yourself in the Lord, he will give you the desires of your heart." And that was just simple right there. I mean, regardless of what it is, whether it's baseball, whether it's what you do for a living, whether it's family, whether it's kids, anything in your life, delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. It does not matter what it is. He cares about everything that we care about. James 1:19, I love it for my kids. Be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger. And I think I try to memorize that when it comes to my kids. And then this one's been really hitting me lately. I haven't memorized it yet, but it's Philippians 2, 3 and 4. It says, "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others." And I think that's huge as a husband and as a father for me. I was raised, like I said, as the youngest of 4 kids, and I think I naturally grew up a little spoiled and a little selfish. and then you throw in what we are naturally as human beings in terms of just being selfish. And I'm wretched in so many ways in that sense, and selfish in so many ways. So that really puts it in perspective in terms of, I like to think of that one in terms of my marriage, just holding my wife above myself.
That's awesome. Man, I appreciate that, don't you? It's awesome. Is that the verse? Is that the verse that was on your mind when you kind of working through this contract the last couple of weeks? I'm just teasing. We're excited about that, by the way, and hopefully it'll even be longer at some point. So tell us, how does your faith tie into baseball on a daily basis, those times that are difficult that you're going through, the challenges of being a Christian in pro sports?
It's the great part about it is when I'm 0 for 23, I have a God there who is gonna he's gonna lift me up and pick me up. It's just obviously that a game that is based on failure, there is nothing that you can do I wrote something down. This is I think this will kind of this has a lot to do with so many things, but in terms of kind of what I've talked about and where I'm at, I was reading in my quiet time. I was reading My Utmost for His Highest yesterday. I was a book by Oswald Chambers, and he said yesterday, if we place our faith in human goodness, we will go under when testing comes. And I'm tested so often in the game of baseball, and if I think that I went to chapel yesterday, or I'm being a good person, or whatever's going on in my life, if I think that's going to help me be a better baseball player, if I'm doing silly, superstitious things, God's up there laughing at me. Sorry, I wrote a few other notes too. Obviously, my faith, just ties into the story I just told about just prayer and baseball, and how I want God to be a part of my career and my daily life. I don't. Obviously, it's easy to think that God should be part of your family as your job as a husband, or your job as a father, what you're called to do. But I don't know. I want God to be involved in every little thing of my life. I mean, we talk about all the time how God should basically be like a friend. He should walk side by side with you. If you guys look closely enough at me in the outfield, you'll probably see me talking to God sometimes. I might look a little crazy, but I have a lot of downtime out there in the outfield, and there's no better time. I sing songs to myself out there. I talk to God a lot, but it's a great opportunity. I want to see if I wrote something down. I mean, I think. Sorry, what was the question? Because if there's baseball questions, I want to make sure I covered. I want to make sure I covered it completely. If there's baseball
living
questions,
out your faith in
I can cover them perfectly. But man, when it comes to my faith, I don't know. I'm humbled and honored to be able to share Jesus with people. And if I go up there and I have the bases loaded and I strike out, I'm disappointed, and I'm a competitor. I'm probably going to be kind of angry, but then I'll see my kids 15 or 20 minutes later, and the smiles on their faces will wipe that all away. If I get to come and talk to people and share Jesus with people, I do not want to mess it up. I have a great opportunity and calling to do this. I don't feel like I'm the greatest speaker in the world, but I feel like this is something God has called me to do. So when it comes to my faith and questions about my faith, I always make sure to be prepared and bring notes, because I don't know, I'm going to be accountable someday. God's going to talk to me in heaven, and hopefully He will say, "Well done, good and faithful servant." But I don't know. I think there's still a lot of work to be done in that sense.
Well, I'm going to close with one last question. It seems obviously the face of the Rangers is changing a little bit this year. Some of those favorite players that were mentioned up here earlier. The one that the angel that flew west, Michael Young, different guys like that. Obviously, the stuff in the news this past week with Nelson Cruz, those kind of things. It seems like the Lord's given you an elevated position of leadership. Every time I turn on the news, they're interviewing you. It seems like. And so, how does your faith kind of fit into that position of leadership that He's given you? It seems like to me you're taking opportunity and using it.
Yeah, I mean, when I think about leadership in a game of baseball or as a Christian man, I think about the first thing that it makes me think about is if I am a leader or I don't know, what type of man do I want to follow? And I wrote some notes on this one too. What kind of man do I want to follow? First and foremost, I know that we don't always have the option of this in our lives, but I want him to be a man of God. Two is, I want it to be somebody who wants to, man of God is somebody who wants to be like Jesus and somebody who has at one time served. Jesus was the King of Kings, and he served. He washed his disciples' feet. He served in so many ways. So I want a man who has a servant's heart. I want to follow someone who meets and is ready to face a challenge and does not want to back down. I think that's an obvious one. Anytime you watch a movie and you see, I'm thinking of like a Gladiator or Troy or one of those movies where guys are going into battle. Obviously, the guy that's leading them into battle, he might have some fear in him, but he's facing that challenge. He's ready to face that challenge head on. I want to follow somebody who is active and not passive. When I think about this, I think of being a leader in my marriage, because there have been many mistakes that I've made in my life, in my marriage, where I have not, I've known that there's been an issue or a problem, and maybe I'll let my wife fix it. Maybe I'm thinking that I know what I want. Maybe I see the type of man that I am and the woman that my wife is, or the type of marriage that I want to have, but I don't sit there and I don't map it out. I don't think this is where I am and that's where I want to be. How am I going to get there? I think I'm just going to sit back and hopefully things are going to work out, and that is not what a leader should be. Obviously, we're talking about a household here, but you can apply that to life and sports, baseball, in so many ways. This kind of goes back to what we were talking about and the scripture that I mentioned. I want a leader who sees others as more important than themselves. And finally, I think this is a good one, and my wife and I were actually talking about this a few weeks ago. I want somebody to lead me who is not thinking in his mind, I'm going to be the leader, I'm going to stand up here, and I'm going to take charge. I want to lead somebody who naturally just not only talks the talk, but walks the walk, and that it's something very natural for them to bring people together, just an easygoing type person that cares. And so I think those are the type of people that I want to follow. Those are characteristics. So if I'm going to be any type of leader, I better have pretty much all of those.
That's good. That's good. Well, we want to open it up for a time. Definitely. We've gone a little longer than we intended to, but man, I've enjoyed asking questions. Elo, you got a question? All right, Elo, tell us. Versus not playing every day. Playing every day versus not playing every day. How that affects?
From a mental standpoint, I don't know that I trust the fact that I'm going to play every single day until I'm actually out there every single day. But in a way, that's my mindset, period. I I don't want to be the guy who, I'm fortunate enough to have 5.5 years in the big leagues right now. And there's plenty of guys that get to that point and think, I've done a lot. I'm the type of guy that I'm never going to stop working. I'm never going to take a thing for granted. I get uncomfortable with the fact of being content and of just not coming to the ballpark with that mindset. I feel like I have a huge responsibility, and if I get to the point where I think anything other than what I'm thinking, I think my performance is going to go down. I just just like having a fear of God is healthy, and it's part of our relationship with Him. I have just a fear of, in a good way, of of not getting that opportunity. And I think that in a lot of ways drives me, because at the end of the day, it's like I tell a lot of people, what do you want to, everybody asks me, what do you want to hit this year? What are your goals? And if you look at it in terms of numbers, I feel like you're going to set yourself up for failure, especially the way baseball is such a weird sport. But if I look at it in terms of, I want to drive home from the ballpark every night knowing I had 4 or 5 great at-bats, that I saw 8 or 9 pitches, that I lined out a few times, or whatever. But I'm probably getting off track on this question by now.
I think that's good.
Just basically, I don't know. My mindset is not going to change one bit. I think the one thing that needs to change is I really need to make sure that I'm on top of taking care of my body, because playing 162 games versus playing, and not that I'm going to play every one, it's, it takes a toll on your body, and I'm getting old. I'm 31.
Go ahead. Those high moments. Basically, he asked the questions so that we're recording this, by the way.
Okay.
He asked the question, are those times during the season when he has those high moments that
I don't know
distract you from your faith?
Yeah, I don't know if I can think of one off the top of my head, but definitely when things start going well, I can definitely forget about putting the Lord first. It's a very easy thing to do, and I've done it plenty. There's been plenty of instances where I'm having my quiet time every single day when I'm in some type of funk or struggling, and then I'm struggling to have my quiet time when things are going well. So that's definitely a great question, but it's something that I have definitely struggled with.
A couple more questions, yes.
Has there been a prayer group on the Rangers squad?
There is. We have a team chaplain, and we have a chapel every Sunday. When we're at home, our team chaplain leads it, and then when we're on the road, the opposing team's team chaplain will come over and set a time, and we'll all come together. I guess the thing that we struggle with is, on any given Sunday for chapel, we'll probably get 10 to 15 guys, which is a great showing. But then we'll have a midweek Bible study where we'll actually, chapel's 15 minutes. There's no interaction. It's our chaplain completely leading it, talking the whole time. Somebody else might pray, but that's about it. When we're going to dig into the Word a little bit more during the week and have a Bible study, maybe for 30 minutes, maybe for 45 minutes, we'll get 3 guys. So that's it's discouraging in some ways. There's a lot of guys that have plenty of potential, that I'm just praying for growth. But something that I kind of wrote in my notes that I didn't get to mention, this is a good time to mention, is something that I struggle with. When I leave here in a few weeks, my wife says she notices some negative differences in me when I leave for spring training and during the season. Just being around these guys, not being in church frequently, not being in the Word as frequently as I could. And I think of 1 Corinthians 15:33, and it says, "Do not be misled. Bad company corrupts good character." And wherever you guys are in your places of business, it's not just a game of baseball. It's the world, and there's going to be people around that take you away from what you're trying to focus your eyes on. So we do have some guys, but most of the guys are not in a point where we're really helping each other like we could.
That's great. Yeah.
Got a twofold question. You get to witness to a lot of first basemen, and the second part is, what do y'all talk about when that reliever comes in and you're in the outfield waiting for his warm-up pitch?
I've never witnessed to a first baseman, but that's a great idea. I need to get on that. So maybe, yeah. The funny thing is when I'm in the outfield with Josh and Nelson, those two guys are crazy, and they don't care about doing whatever. Like, they're waving at fans, they're throwing gum at me. Like, Josh is asking me to pop his back in front of 50,000 people. So I guess it's different whatever guys are out there, but when it's Josh and Nelson, it's always funny because those guys are so easygoing. Nelson, in my opinion, is the funniest guy on the team. So if it's a tough night where our pitchers are having a tough night, we might be like, man, it feels like a track meet out here tonight. But most nights it's just, who do you think what do you think's going to happen next, or just talking about the game in general, plays that have happened, that sort of thing.
That's great. A couple more questions. Yeah, back here. Very back. Bob?
You mentioned going to Cape Cod and the difference between the aluminum bat and baseball bat. What happened to your batting average between college and Cape Cod? And as a follow-up on that, compare the differences as you move up from college to the minors to the bigs and the differences in each change.
I think the difference between aluminum and wood when you're in college just helps you realize the difference, basically how you need to clean up your swing path. Basically meaning long swing versus short swing and just getting straight to the ball. I hit 270 my freshman year of college. I went to Cape Cod and I hit 213 with, no power at all. I did not drive the ball at all. My sophomore year in college, I hit around 320, and then I went to the Cape Cod League and was starting to figure things out. So I hit over 300 my second year in the Cape, and then that really kind of helped me take off. I hit over 400 my junior year in college. Once I kind of figured out how to use a wood bat, now the Cape, the average pitcher is probably throwing 86 to 88. Now, when I moved to probably high A, when I said I started to struggle, you got guys throwing 92 to 95, and I was struggling to shorten my swing and make consistent adjustments and just really, really learn my own swing. When I got to the big leagues with the Red Sox, I figured some things out, but I went to the minor leagues the next year and continued to struggle. When I really started to take off offensively is when I came here and I got to work with Rudy Jaramillo. He's got his 5 steps that he's known for, and he mapped it out, and I learned a lot. It's great to have a great hitting coach, but if you don't know your own swing as a player, you're going to struggle in major leagues because my hitting coach is not right there beside me when I'm in the box. I got to make adjustments from pitch to pitch or at bat by myself, and Rudy was the guy that kind of helped change that for me, and just. I guess a simple adjustment I made last year is I kind of had a more left center approach where I was going to go to the opposite field, and if a guy came in, I was going to pull it. Well, my swing path is longer going to the opposite field. I just do not drive the ball to the opposite field. So I had a good talk with Ian Kinsler. I was standing off the plate. He said, you can handle the ball in. He said, you should scoot up on the plate. So I scooted up on the plate. I tried to start pulling everything. And that's kind of that's a tough way to describe it because you don't describe hitting that way, and I feel like I'm a rare hitter. I can look to pull the ball and still hit it the other way. But that's the major adjustment I made this year, to where I'm playing to my own strengths. In the past, I was letting the pitchers exploit me away with some of my weaknesses. Instead, this year, I was able to use my strengths all year, or at least from June 1st on.
That's awesome. One more question. Do what?
Bat construction? I don't know. Guys started using maple a few years ago, and maple blows up. Ash is what's been used from the beginning. I actually started using birch in 2007. I went from a guy who broke 24 bats in the first half of 2007. I switched to birch in the second half, and it's the same bat, the bat that was given away here tonight. It's the same bat that I've used since 2007. I break 4 of them a year. So to each his own. You know, Josh is such a strong guy. You've seen he throws bats in the stands, and he breaks probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 dozen a year, but I think part of that is because his bat speed is unmatched by any guy in this game. And, you know, you hit a ball wrong when the bat's moving that fast, it's bound to break.
Awesome. One more question. Yes.
I don't think they have a specific outreach. You know, everything usually is done through the Texas Rangers Foundation, and they branch it off in certain ways the way they want to. I think they have helped in areas like that before, but I think they just treat each individual situation differently and kind of, you know, bring it up as it comes, or as people bring those ideas to them.
All right. We got a young man way back there in the back. You want to ask a question? Are you a Yankee fan?
Hardest meaning most difficult, or one that comes to mind was I know it was a day game at home. I think it was Mother's Day last year, actually. We got beat by about 10 runs. Sabathia started for the Yankees. Jeter hit 2 homers. I think someone hit a grand slam. It was just one of those days where everything went wrong. I don't know. That's a tough question. I'd have to think on that for the hardest game that I've ever played in. Probably Game 6 of the 2011 World Series.
Amen. Amen. Well, I think we could be here all night asking questions, and we want to be respectful of David's time. But so, last question: how can we pray for you?
I think I've thought a lot lately about preparation, and you know, it's easy for me to baseball's easy at times, and you know, we're guys and we love to run around and play, and you know, pick up a ball, pick up a bat, go out there and play, run around. You know, I see who's pitching tonight. I'm gonna go you know, I know what they're throwing. I'm thinking it in my head. You know, there's a lot of preparation that goes into that. But I've thought about it more, and I've been encouraging people more on the side of I don't do that enough in my personal life. I don't do it as a man. I don't do it as a husband and a father like I should. You know, I think in baseball, you know, what type of year do I want to have this year? You know, what do I want to do? How am I going to get there? But I should think more about what type of husband do I want to be? What type of father do I want to be, and how am I going to get there? And then just for my family, since I'm away from them so much during the season, and for me, I think it's so easy that I become physically and spiritually, mentally, every sense of the word, exhausted during the season, the way that the season takes a grind on me. So every year, it just, I fall back. Wherever I am spiritually, right now, until the end of the season, I regress. And I am so determined for that not to happen this year. I want to continue. I want to grow this year so badly. And just pray that happens, and that that God shows me the way.
All right. Well, let's thank David for being with us tonight. Amen. You bet. Thank you, brother. That was awesome. Thanks.